let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're looking at something that could totally change the game for mobile apps.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
And no, it's not like another one of those productivity hacks. This is way cooler.
Definitely has the potential to totally change what's possible with apps.
Exactly. We're talking AI, specifically Google's Vertex AI in Firebase SDK. Got this article from InfoQ here. It's called Google's Vertex AI in Firebase SDK now ready for production use. And the big news is basically that
That's right.
this SDK is ready to go officially for production.
So developers can use the power of Google's Gemini AI right in their apps for Android and iOS.
And it's not just like a small update. This is huge. Even for like small developers or people with, not a lot of resources can now build apps that have these crazy AI features.
Yeah.
It's going to maybe put them on a more level playing field with like the big tech companies.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the most exciting things about this whole thing. That's like opening up this world of like really advanced AI to like tons of new creators.
Yeah. I can already picture like all these new apps that I'm going to be like, I didn't even know I needed that. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's break it down.
Yeah, good idea.
For those of us who aren't exactly coding wizards, what is this SDK and what makes it so special?
Basically, it's like a toolbox for using Gemini AI in your apps. Makes it really smooth, easy, doesn't have to be a big hassle.
Okay.
Developers don't have to be like experts in the cloud or learn like whole new programming languages to use it.
So no more needing a PhD in computer science just to make an app that predicts my next grocery list.
Right.
Awesome.
Exactly. And the article actually highlights some really cool apps that are already using this SDK. So there's Meal Planner. It uses AI to like make you unique meal plans. So, no more stressing about what to make for dinner.
Oh, see, that's something I would definitely use because my indecisiveness when it comes to dinner, legendary. What other cool examples are there?
There's this other one, Life. It's an AI-powered journal. Basically turns your conversations into journal entries.
Oh, wow.
So it can like capture your thoughts, your reflections, makes journaling really effortless.
So basically, I could like have a deep conversation with my best friend over coffee, and this app would just turn it into like a thoughtful journal entry.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And then there's Hiker.
Hiker.
Which is using AI to like enhance the hiking experience.
Okay, that one I'm really intrigued by. Like, what could AI even do for hiking? Is it like a virtual trail guide that tells you about like switchbacks or suggests like scenic viewpoints?
The article keeps it a little mysterious, but, makes you think about the possibilities. Maybe it like personalizes your trail recommendations, based on your fitness level, your preferences, or even gives you like real-time safety info.
Okay, now I'm really curious. We got to find out more about Hiker later.
Definitely.
But before we get too lost in like AI-powered hiking adventures, let's get back to the SDK itself. We're talking about AI integration. Can't forget about security.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Super important to make sure that people's like sensitive data is protected.
Right.
And that's where Firebase App Check comes in.
Okay. Could you break down how that works?
So think of it like it's like a bouncer for your app.
Okay.
You make sure that the traffic coming in, to use the AI is legit, prevents unauthorized access. So it's protecting the user data.
So it's like a security checkpoint, making sure no bad guys are getting in and messing with the AI or like stealing data.
Exactly. And it also makes sure that the AI is only responding to like requests from authorized users and devices.
Gotcha.
And, moving beyond just security, another challenge is keeping up with AI because AI is always like evolving, improving.
Right.
So developers need a way to keep their apps updated, without having to release new versions all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. It'd be annoying to have an app with like outdated AI that doesn't know the latest tricks. So how does the SDK address that?
So that's where remote configuration comes in.
Okay.
Basically lets developers tweak settings, even features on the fly.
Oh, cool.
Without users having to download like a whole new version of the app.
Oh, so it's like a live update system that can like fine tune the AI behind the scenes.
Exactly. So they can adjust things like the the maximum number of tokens the model uses.
Yeah.
Or the temperature setting, which influences how creative the AI's responses are. They can even update the system instructions, like the instructions that, guide the AI's overall behavior.
Wow, that's a lot of control.
Yeah.
Like they can really shape how the AI act.
Pretty much.
So we've got security covered. We've got a way to keep the AI updated. What other key things do we need to think about with AI integration?
Well, building apps with powerful AI, that's one thing.
Right.
But using them responsibly, that's a whole other story. And this is where user feedback is super important.
I'm guessing that means, like, more than just checking the App Store reviews.
Oh yeah, definitely. Developers need to know how users are actually experiencing the AI,
Right.
In the app.
Right.
Are the features helpful? Are they accurate? Are they actually meeting, like, the user's needs?
So making sure the AI is actually useful, not just, like, doing cool tricks.
Right, exactly.
So how do developers get that feedback?
Well, they can use simple things like, thumbs up, thumbs down buttons in the app,
Mm-hmm.
or more detailed forms if users want to give, like specific thoughts and suggestions. The main thing is, so Vertex AI in Firebase, it's super powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing it can't do yet is streaming.
Okay, so for certain apps that need, like, a constant stream of input and output from the AI,
Yeah,
this SDK might not be the best fit.
right, exactly. Like if you're building like a real-time translation app, you'd probably need to look at other options.
Gotcha. Are there other limitations developers should know about?
Yeah. Another thing is the API, while it's simplified, it's easy to use, it might not be flexible enough for super complex AI interactions. Like if you want to build like a really fancy chatbot with like lots of branching dialogue or really complicated automations,
Yeah.
you might need different tools for that.
Okay, this is a lot to take in, but it's
Yeah.
also really exciting.
Absolutely.
Before we go into the ethical side of things, the impact of this tech, which we'll do in part 2, I just want to recap what we've talked about so far. So we've looked at the Vertex AI and Firebase SDK, learned about features like Firebase App Check for security, remote configuration for keeping the AI updated, and we've seen how this SDK could make powerful AI available to, like, anyone, not just the big companies,
Right.
empowering developers to make, like, really creative and fun mobile apps.
Sure.
All while remembering that, responsible AI development is important and that user feedback really matters in shaping these AI-powered apps.
Absolutely.
Join us in part 2, where we'll dig deeper into what this tech means for all of us and what impact it might have on our lives. Welcome back. It's wild to think we could be at, like, the start of a whole new era for mobile apps.
Yeah, I think apps in the future are going to look pretty different than what we're used to.
Totally. But like we were talking about before, it's not just about all the cool new features, right? There's this whole other side to it. How is this going to actually affect our lives?
It's different talking about AI in theory, but it's like a whole other thing when it's in the apps we use every day.
That's what's so fascinating to me. Like, we talked about those apps, the meal planner and the AI journal, but how do you actually see those types of apps changing, like how we live, how we work, even how we interact with the world?
Okay, well, let's take the meal planner, right? On the surface, it seems like, oh, it's convenient, no more thinking about what to cook.
Right.
But think about the bigger picture.
Okay, I'm listening. Lay it on me.
What if this app gets so good at making these meal plans that, like, everyone starts using it for everything?
Yeah.
It could change how we buy groceries, how we plan our meals, even how we think about food.
You're right. It could even change, like, our health. Like, maybe people eat healthier because of it, or maybe they get too reliant on it and stop making their own decisions.
Exactly. And then you have the AI journal. Imagine if everyone's capturing every conversation, every thought with this app. It could change how we see memory, how we reflect on things.
Like, we're outsourcing a part of our brain to this AI. Would we remember things differently? Would we talk to each other differently if we knew it might end up in some AI journal entry?
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
And it shows how this tech isn't just about making life easier. It could change our habits, what we do, even how we think.
Okay, mind blown. And we haven't even talked about Hiker yet.
Right.
AI and hiking, what do you think about that?
That's a really interesting one. On one hand, AI could make it safer, giving you updates on the trail, warnings about dangers or weather.
That would be super helpful, especially if you're hiking alone, or in a new place.
Absolutely. And it could make hiking more personal, like recommending trails that are right for you.
But are we going to get too reliant on AI even when we're out in nature? Like, does it take away from the adventure, the fun of figuring things out on your own?
That's definitely a concern. It's about finding the right balance. AI should be a tool that helps us, not something that controls us or limits what we can do.
I think that's a key point. We're not saying AI is bad, but we need to understand how it might change things and make sure we're using it in a way that's good for us.
Exactly. And that brings us to another big part of this, the developers. the people who are actually making these apps.
Yeah, if it's now easier than ever to put AI in apps, there's a lot of responsibility to make sure those apps are used for good.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's not just about making cool features anymore. They have to think about the ethics, about the impact it's going to have on people.
So what does that look like, responsible AI development? What can developers actually do?
Well, they have to be super careful about the data they use to train the AI. If the data is biased, then the AI could be biased too, discriminating against certain groups.
So it's about being aware of that bias from the very beginning.
Right. And it's not just the data. They have to think about how people might misuse the app, how someone could exploit it.
Can you give an example?
Let's say the AI journal app. What if someone uses it to lie to people, making up fake journal entries? Or what if they hack into someone else's journal?
That's scary. It shows how even apps that seem harmless can have, like, unintended consequences if you're not careful.
Absolutely. And then there's transparency. People have the right to know if an app is using AI and what it's doing with their data.
So no more hiding behind, like, fancy words like smart features or personalized.
Right. Developers have to be upfront about how they're using AI and explain it clearly.
It's about trust, right?
Yeah.
Giving people the information so they can decide if they're okay with it.
Exactly.
Wow, this SDK is like a Pandora's box. So many things to think about.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool, but it's up to the developers and all of us, really, to make sure it's used the right way.
Totally agree. And this is just the beginning of the conversation. As AI gets more advanced, these questions are only going to get more complicated.
This has been an incredible conversation. I feel like we've only scratched the surface. What other big questions about AI should we be thinking about as all these new apps come out?
Privacy is one that needs a lot more attention. As AI gathers more and more info about us, how do we make sure our personal data is safe? How do we know it's being used responsibly?
That's a big one, and it's something we'll have to keep talking about as AI becomes a bigger part of everything we do online.
Definitely. And I think another area that's going to be hugely affected by AI is education.
Oh, interesting. What are your thoughts on that? How do you see it changing how we teach and learn?
Imagine if every student had their own AI tutor, one that adapts to how they learn, gives them customized help.
That sounds amazing. They could learn at their own pace and focus on what they need help with the most.
Exactly. And AI could even help teachers by doing things like grading for them,
Right.
giving them more time to actually teach and mentor students.
But is there a risk? Like, are we going to rely on AI too much in education? Will students lose those critical thinking skills, or will they stop interacting with each other as much?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
We have to be careful. AI in education should be about making learning better, not replacing teachers entirely.
It seems like the same idea keeps coming up. AI can do a lot of good, but we have to use it carefully and thoughtfully.
I completely agree. It's not like AI has a set path. It's up to us to decide what it becomes.
This conversation has definitely given me a lot to think about. Before we wrap things up in part 3, I want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on how AI might change education? Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into AI and mobile apps.
It's been pretty amazing exploring all this, the SDK and what it could mean, for the future.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. From figuring out what this SDK even is to, like, imagining AI in our everyday lives.
Totally. And I think it's clear that this tech could completely change not just the apps we use, but how we do, like everything.
Yeah, definitely. Before we wrap up, I want to, zoom out for a sec.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean that this SDK is, officially ready to use? What does that say about where mobile apps are going?
To me, it feels like a turning point. We're moving from AI being this, special thing only a few people could use to something everyone can work with.
So it's not just, the Googles and Facebooks of the world anymore.
Right. This SDK is leveling the playing field. Smaller devs, startups, they can all use these really advanced AI features now. It could lead to some crazy new stuff we haven't even thought of yet.
That is exciting. But like we've been saying, more power means more responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
What about us, the people using these apps? How do we make sure we're smart about the AI we're interacting with?
That's a great question. We can't just sit back and let AI happen to us. We have to be part of shaping it. Don't just assume everything an AI says is true, right? Think about where the information's coming from.
Right.
And most importantly, talk to the developers. Give them feedback.
So the two-way street.
Totally. The feedback we give, whether it's good or bad, helps them make the AI better, fix any problems, make sure it's actually useful.
It's cool to know we can have a say in this whole thing.
Yeah.
As we finish up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with something to think about. As AI gets more and more woven into our lives, we got to think about, like, the trade-offs. Convenience is great, but how much control are we giving up? What about privacy? These are tough questions, but important ones.
Definitely. And those are the kind of questions we should be asking when we do these deep dives.
Yeah.
Makes us think critically, look at things from different angles.
Yeah, exactly. It's about engaging with the world around us.
Thanks for joining us on this one. Hope you found it interesting and got you thinking.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
And remember, the future of AI is being written right now. Let's make sure we write it well.